Hi, I'm Murray Charteris. Welcome back to Art Lessons Online. And today I'm going to be doing a bit of a demonstration about how I go about doing a drawing. So I'm going to be drawing this line here, and I'm going to be explaining to you as I'm going along a bit about my thought process and what I'm thinking as I'm drawing. Okay, so it's all about evaluating the shapes that you're seeing. As I've explained earlier, this thought process of evaluation is the most important part of our drawing. It's working out what sort of shape that object actually is, where the lines should be positioned to represent that shape. How long should those lines be? What sort of angle should they be on? All of those sorts of elements. Okay, so I'm going to be explaining that as I'm going along. Let's get started. We'll have fun. The first step is where most people start to go wrong. We need to analyse the shape of the object that we're about to draw. What happens when we first look at this photo is that our brain immediately tries to work out what the object actually is. To do this, our brain goes through a process of matching what we're seeing to other pre-recorded images in our brain to identify the object. This happens so quickly that we aren't usually aware of it. The result is that by the time we go to draw it, our brain has already come up with several different ways that the object should be drawn so that it is recognisable as being a lion. We are picking out the identifiable parts of the lion, and our brain tends to focus on them. It's going to be different for everyone, but it may be things like making sure that it has a mane, making sure that the eyes are diamond shaped, or whatever else our brain is telling us that is identifiable as being a lion. So when we start to draw the shapes, our brain tells us that we must include those elements so that other people will recognise my drawing as being a lion. The problem is when we try and add these elements, it's starting to deviate from what the real shapes may be. The result would be a mixture of what our brain is telling us and only some aspects of what we're really seeing. Chances are it won't look like the object that we're trying to draw. I'll refer to this as symbolism, and I'll talk more about this later in the introduction course. But for now, the key is going to be to ignore what our brain is trying to make us do and focus entirely on what we are really seeing. Now, the easiest way to get started is to break it down into the simplest shapes. The main body can be outlined here by a rectangle that is sitting on an angle. This is defined by two almost parallel lines running down either side. Okay, so we've got two parallel lines coming down here. We can start with them. We need to sort of work out how long each of those lines are in proportion to everything else and where they should be positioned on the page. So we can start with the back one down here, and I'm going to position it over here. So first of all is to get the angle right. So let's just really quickly sketch it in here. Doesn't matter if it's not perfect just yet. We'll sort of move it around. Try and get a bit of a scale. Now from that scale we need to sort of work out how far in this other line should be. So one way we can do that is to measure different parts of it. So I'll measure from the shoulder here down to this bone here, and we can put it on its side here and see how that compares to it. You can see it's almost the same, it's just a little bit shorter than that. So this part here is almost the same as that. So we can do that sort of measuring as we're going along just to make things a bit easier. So I'm just going to take a really rough sort of measurement here. I'm going to say that's sort of where my shoulder's going to be, somewhere there. And we'll just get a bit of a measurement on mine. And we can go in and measure somewhere around here is going to be the other side of the line. Okay, so we're going to have almost a parallel line going that way. And from here, from the shoulder, it tends to arch just over the top here, like this. So just basic shapes to start with. We want to get the widest shape we can, just to start with. Always start with the biggest ones first, makes it a lot easier to work out. Not getting too detailed just yet, just sort of working it out. And you can see I'm not committing to any particular line just yet. I've got 10 different lines there to choose from at this stage. Just keeping my options open. Now we've also got to be careful we're not going too far off the page here. And we need to sort of measure how far out this is coming compared to, say, the rest of it. So we're going to be coming out to here somewhere, so that's not too bad. I might want to move the whole lot over a little bit, so I'm just going to move it over here. Which will bring now this line over here, over. Now to work out where everything should be going, I do a bit of an evaluation vertically and horizontally from any point. So if I was to draw this line here of the ear, if I take a line straight down from that, I can see that it's lined up with this part in here, this turning point in here. So what I need to do is, now that I've moved all this over, this line is actually going to come over a bit further. And that point there is sort of going to line up with it along here. So it needs to come over that way just a little bit further there. They're really loose lines at the moment, really light pencil work. I'm barely even touching the page really. And you can see where I'm gripping the pencil. It's about, a bit over halfway up the pencil. So just sort of working out basic shapes. Now we can see here we've got to work out where this eye is positioned. We can do that by sort of taking a measuring point here. We can see it's about halfway between the very top of the ear and the chin down here. So we want to work out sort of where halfway is on ours as well. So that's going to be about here somewhere. Now even though we know it's an eye, just be careful of the shape of it. We don't want to draw in a round circle here for an eye, which is a shape that our brain usually associates with an eye. Look at the shape of it here. It's sort of flat across the top, coming down on an angle, almost a diamond shape, but not quite. So just sort of work it out in that sort of terms. Let's take it down a little bit further again. Sometimes things can be a bit deceiving, and doing those measurements can help you to work it out a bit more accurately. Again here, this back part, if I take a horizontal line from that, we can see it almost lines up with this foot here, just a little bit higher, and so I'm taking a horizontal line across there to work out where that should go. Bring this out a little bit further. Okay, so really sketchy at this stage. There's lots of lines there to choose from. We're gradually darkening some of those lines as we're going along, just to differentiate them so that we know they're the ones that we actually want to work with. And at this stage, it's a matter of evaluating what we think is right here and what we think needs adjusting. Okay, now what we can do is we can start refining some of those lines a little bit. So we can start taking off some of the ones that we think aren't appropriate anymore. These were just our guidelines that we were using to work things out. So just to narrow it down a little bit. Okay, so we've got the sketching part pretty well there. We've worked out the shape and pretty happy with that. Now we can start to refine that even further now. So now I want the lines to be a little bit more precise as I'm going along. Just not too much, but you can see here, this needs certainly adjusting over here. Which part? I'm going to move this leg over a little. gives us a bit more room there now. Okay. So now when we come to, we don't want to detail too much too soon here. So I'm going to start refining some of these shapes a little bit, but not detail it too much just yet. Now the eye is always the most important part of a drawing, so I tend to go to it first and spend a bit more time on it. Just sort of getting it looking right. Okay, what shape is the nose here? I'm putting in a few suggestions of hair here, but just keep in mind this isn't anything final just yet. This is just still rough and loose, but it just helps me give me an idea of where things are going. Nothing is locked in at this stage. You can always move things around if you need to. So I'm just making a bit of an adjustment here to the back. Okay, now when you're dealing with fur, it's really important to always move in the direction that the fur is flowing. You can see here this has a definite direction or a different flow to the fur. And if you draw a line along that flow, it'll travel down here and around here. Here will travel out here. Here it starts to change direction and travels back the other way. Now if we keep all of our pencil work traveling in that same direction, then we're going to start to give the illusion of fur without too much work at all. Very lightly on the page. I'm just picking out some of the darker patches here. You can see where there's an edge of the fur there and a bit of shadowing underneath it. So I'm just sort of sketching in just a little bit of fur detail there just to give that impression. Now it's not detailing at this stage, it's still just working out placement of where things are going to be going. I can also start darkening some patches as I'm going along as well. You can see here it's getting quite dark down and around here. So I can start defining these edges quite clearly by darkening those areas. And not too much, I'm still not pressing heavy. Still very light line work. Okay, let's start to put in a bit of this detail of the paws here. Now, it's these sorts of areas that start to get a little bit complicated for people. Just remember just to look at it in terms of what shape it is, what direction line to draw, and where that line should be positioned. Just picking out some of the dark patches here, just to give it a little bit of shape. So I'm not trying to make up what I can't see here. We know that there's pores there, but they're a little bit hard to see in amongst all the fur. So I'm not trying to make it up. This is a mistake that a lot of beginners will make, is they'll just try and make up where they think the pores should be. So I'm just going off the dark patches here and just sort of working out the shapes of what those dark patches are. And the rest will take care of itself once we start to get a bit more of our own fur in there. Okay, so you can see that's starting to take a bit more shape there now. Now comes the fun part, the detailing. If you'd like to know how to draw the fur effects seen in this demonstration, then you can purchase the interactive lesson, How to Draw Fur. This interactive lesson will take you through the effects step by step and teach you what to look for in the reference and how to simulate the effect in your own drawings. You'll be provided with reference photos and several methods for achieving the right effect for different types of fur. Well, I hope you enjoyed this demonstration, and I hope to see you again soon in the next lesson.